All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chicanery. It is your usual host. I am Danny, and we have JT.
Hello again.
So, today is a recap of Qatar, the Qatar 1,812 kilometers. I'm not sure if that's pronounced 1812, 1,812. I didn't actually think to look that up first. But point is WEC is back. It's a season opener at Qatar, and we will be spending probably a considerable amount of time sort of working our way through that. Um, so I guess we will. Well, I guess we'll get started. But first, a word from our sponsor, Homefield Apparel. Homefield has entered the thrilling world of motorsports with the Hendrick Motorsport Collection, which is available to pre-order now. Based out of Indianapolis, you likely already know Homefield for their high-quality, officially licensed collegiate apparel. You probably also know that they have more than 180 schools on their roster, so there's a little something for everyone. I mean, seriously, they even have my local Division II school, Wayne State University. Given Homefield's storied legacy in throwback college apparel and their relentless commitment to quality, moving to racing apparel seemed like the next logical step, and that's reaffirmed in their meticulous approach to designing the Hendrick Motorsport Collection. Iconic logos, legendary drivers, and unforgettable moments, this collection is a celebration of the golden era of NASCAR. Here at Victory Lane Vibes, we're super excited to get our hands on what Homefield has cooked up. Their collegiate wear is second to none. And in concert with some of the most legendary drivers and one of the most legendary teams in NASCAR history, the Hendrick Motorsports Collection is a banger. To learn more, visit www.homefieldapparel.com. Their online storefront is easy and convenient to navigate, making it that much easier for you to proudly represent your favorite drivers and relive NASCAR's glory days. And be sure to use promo code VLV24 for 15% off at checkout on your first order. Again, the Hendrick Motorsport Collection is available to pre-order now. Use promo code VLV24 for 15% off at checkout on your first order. And thanks again to Homefield Apparel for supporting this podcast. So, I guess the first thing was Qatar prologue. And before actually we get into any of the nitty-gritty details of that, and I just, like, maybe I'm stupid, but when they talk about, Qatar prologue and blah, 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 I didn't realize that they were talking about what was effectively a super hyped up, glorified
It's
quali
preseason
session.
testing.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe I'm dumb, but I thought it was a bit more than that when you start treating this like its own, like, standalone event almost, or event within an event. So, was it just me?
I mean, I thought at first it was like an actual race until like people were telling me no, it's basically just like a fancy name for preseason testing.
Yeah, I feel bait and switched. I want my money back. But
I mean, I didn't spend any money on it, so
well, I did. Okay, figurative money.
or at least not yet.
Uh, yeah, no, I guess in this instance it's entirely fictional money. But the point is that yeah, I did feel a touch shortchanged if I'm being perfectly honest. But anyway, so yes, the Qatar prologue. So there was, of course, this was effectively the final sort of weekend event. With as it has been lovingly termed, the Wingless Wonder, my beloved. And they did debut the 9X8 with the wing after all of this. Um, I know there were some BOP changes for Hypercar, which I guess, speaking of which, you can take us through that.
I mean, there was like, because honestly, now I'm like, I don't even really care about it that much. I mean, I guess like the big changes were at first like, so Porsche, at least just for hypercar, Porsche had a power reduction and they got a weight reduction as well. Uh, they got reduced to 515 kilowatts. From they went from that to 505 kilowatts, and then their weight, I don't know. Maybe I did this wrong because I don't even know. I didn't check this, but maybe they got a weight increase too. I know Toyota got a weight increase too, um, which obviously, I guess we'll talk about it later. That probably kind of hurt them a little bit during this race because they were nowhere. Ferrari had no changes, which I guess was kind of the weirdest thing considering the fact that they won Le Mans last year. They just decided they're not doing it. They didn't do anything for Ferrari at this point in time, so whatever. Cadillac, weirdly enough, got a power reduction from 504 kilowatts to 499. I don't know why that happened either, but it did. Um, which they didn't do so well either during the race, but we'll get into all of that.
Yeah, so yeah, the bop here was a little bit funky. As alluded to, cars that probably should have had some tweaks to BOP didn't have anything. Cars that really didn't need any additional somehow were hindered even further. It's all very, very strange. Um, but I guess the biggest things is that the one of the customer Porsche 963s, Team Yoda, actually along with the factory car, were very quick. Um, the Lexus RCF was quick as well. And then a bit of fun tomfoolery. I say both away from the racetrack, but not. It was Pippo Durrani v the Twitter admin for the Assetto Fraschini team. And, well, to Assetto Fraschini, ratio successful. I saw that go down, and was like, "Oh, this isn't gonna end well," given that it's, a meme basically a meme Italian team, but it actually went well. And, JT, you and I, we were talking about this off air after we recorded the, episode for, Bahrain, but I'll certainly, repeat it. Pippo's, um, proclivity for driving like a war criminal in racing is probably what hindered, his chances at successfully getting the W in this very odd little Twitter beef. Like,
I mean, I don't even know why it even happened anyways. It was just very random and funny. And I mean, technically, the way I can't find the tweet currently, um, but I know like the way that they responded to him. I mean, like they were pretty classy. Like they effortlessly kind of got him together in a very classy way. I didn't really say too much. Like they didn't have to like drag him or anything really. But I mean, and then some of the points that they made were honestly, I can't lie, they were decent points. Um, so I'm like, okay, kudos to them.
yeah, exactly. While I don't rate the actual race car and the race outfit still particularly highly, for reasons that I shouldn't really need to explain. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of dig the Twitter admin. Um, it's like some of the other at this point famous or be it infamous admin of the Alpine F1 team or the Peugeot Sport team. But if like those folks didn't choose violence on a disturbingly regular occasion. But anyway, yeah, just a amusing but exceptionally random little segue to sort of the prologue period. Um, but now I guess to kind of presage the actual race, after qualifying and what have you, or testing rather. Toyota wasn't particularly quick, and there was lots of chatter about, okay, well, are they slower? They just sandbagging because Toyota has, well, basically since Audi and Porsche have buggered off, Toyota has effectively had run of the prototype class, and Kamui Kobayashi and Brendan Hartley were both like, well, no, we actually are just slow and well,
I mean, I thought they were just really committed to the bit,
yeah,
and they were actually just like sandbagging. They were just trying to like put it off when they were asked about it and trying to act like, no, we're actually struggling. And then it turned out like, yeah, they were.
yeah, exactly. No, they weren't lying. But that shuffles us nicely off into sort of race weekend. Um, so the hyperpole thing that was at Le Mans is effectively being brought over for the entirety of the season. So I guess the biggest thing is a do we I guess the biggest thing is, do we think this is a good format and worth being carried through an entire season as opposed to, quotes, marquee events like Le Mans?
I mean, personally, I don't have any issue with it. I think it was fine. I think it worked fine. I don't think there were any like glaring issues with it. I guess the only thing that I could say may be a glaring issue is just the fact that I don't think the 10 to 12 minutes or whatever it is, however long it is that they give them for just like the regular qualifying round and then hyperpole, at least for the prototypes, it doesn't seem to be enough time simply because it takes their tires a decent amount of time to get up to temperature. Like it takes about like 3 or 4 laps for that to actually, for their tires to actually get up to an adequate temperature and for them to actually like put down decent laps. So I would say maybe if they like, I don't know. That was really my issue. I don't know if like that was, I saw other people also saying pretty much the same thing. So like, I don't know, probably increase, give them a little bit more time for that. Probably more like 15 or 20 minutes or something for qualifying instead of the 10 minutes that they have. Because personally, I just didn't think that was enough because most of the time, at least in hyperpole for the hypercars, most of that time was spent warming up their tires. So
Yeah, and I broadly agree, honestly. That was probably my biggest beef with this format too. It's just that it's just not quite long enough. I understand, the send them out, make them wrestle with the car a bit to get a decent time. It's exciting and blah blah yada yada. I totally get that. And I see the logic in it. But yeah, but I mean, when you're talking about ice cold tires with circa 1,000 horsepower cars, particularly in the prototype class. Um, yeah, you need a little bit more time than that. But otherwise, I think it's fun. I think it is the rare instance of a change made to qualifying that's, dare I say it, actually good. Um, Now we're gonna have some, nonsense somewhere else, and then I will very promptly be singing a different tune. But at least for now, I'm about it. But, speaking of hyperpole, the TF Sport Corvette, was on pole for, LMGT3, which, well, as you all know, that seeing a yellow and black Corvette on pole in GT class makes me very, very happy. Um, the, Lexus, on the other hand, was, not doing so hot. Um, yeah, it was, well, it was just slow. Um Porsche Penske was, on pole, the number 5 specifically. Matt Campbell just continuing to be, like, the most OP driver in existence. Like, can somebody nerf this guy, please? Like, good lord. That man is collecting, accolades and trophies and things like they're Infinity Stones, this year so far. Um Then, the Toyota number 8, well, like we said, the Toyotas they were slow. The number 8 did not make hyperpole at all. The number 7 car did, though, but broadly speaking, Toyota did not have a very good time. Um, and now I guess kinda shuffling off into the race, I guess.
Matt Campbell's back in the car for Sebring. Well, they're gonna win Sebring.
Oh god, I didn't know that. Jesus.
Well, if they don't collide with any of the Acuras again, that is,
Yeah.
they might win.
Holy shnikes. That's that's nuts. Um Yeah, because Matt has been on a tear because he was in the winning Porsche at Daytona, then went to Bathurst and bagged a trophy and then put the car on pole at Qatar and is going to be back at Sebring. How is this man not tired?
How are any of these people not tired? Because quite frankly, I mean, we talked about it in the Bathurst episode. Some of the people that were in Bathurst, they basically just went straight from the 24 hours of Daytona to Bathurst, and now they went from Bathurst to WEC, and now a lot of them are going to be going from this race all the way back to freaking the United States and Florida. It's like, I don't know. I don't know how any of these people are doing this. I think you would think their flesh would just be melting off their bones and they'd be turning into dust and nothing after going through all of this, but no.
That's funny, yeah. All of this travel and racing should be looking like the Thanos snap, yet somehow they're not. Oh, the modern fitness of race drivers is insane. Anyway, I guess off to kind of our customary question when we do these race recaps. Good race or not?
Broadly speaking, I would say yes. I mean, it was the better racing that went on last weekend, I could probably say.
Yeah, I think that's pretty safe to say, honestly. But yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it. I was, same thing. We were talking off air after recording the last episode, and when I was up at the coffee shop, with an AirPod in, working the table, and occasionally, stealing away looks at my laptop to watch because this and F1 were going on, wee hours of, Saturday morning. If you live in Eastern time here in the U.S., which was very inconvenient, but I was there no matter what. But yeah, I agree. Fun race. I enjoyed it certainly more than pretty much anything else that went on throughout the course of the week. There was definitely some tomfoolery because our aforementioned Italian compatriots and Asada Fraschini, they were stopped on track even before the pace laps. And well, I mean, the car was just slow. Uh, it was uh, it was struggle bus for these folks. Um, and then the number 94 Puja got yeeted entering turn one. I think that pinball effect was started off by a GT. I think it was a McLaren that started that. Because I went back because I couldn't at the time watching the broadcast. I couldn't figure out where that started, but I watched highlights this morning.
It was like
Uh,
right at the race start, so it probably was a prototype, someone else in the like prototype hypercar class that
yeah, I
spun
don't know.
them. I don't know who it was though. No,
Yeah,
McLaren was involved in the other incident.
yeah. Like I said, it's weird because, like I said, it was a true kind of concertina effect. It was somebody bumped somebody, and then that final somebody was what spun the Peugeot. Like I said, I just don't remember quite where the chain started because I actually seem to think that might have been the actual person that hit the Peugeot. I think it was a Ferrari or a Porsche that did that. But like I said, I just don't quite remember where the bump train started. Is weird. But yes, speaking of which, yes, a Ferrari got absolutely got bumped up the rear by one of the United Autosport McLaren GTs, and the rear wing, well, the whole rear assembly basically just goes see ya and launches itself into the middle of the track, which was enough to cause a trigger safety car, which was very silly. And then the Peugeot Sport admin tweeting, "Can we have that?" I love that the admin has been a really good sport about the underperforming Peugeot hypercar. Again, I've said it on this show time and time again. It is probably my favorite prototype in a very long time, but it just hasn't worked. And we were so close to greatness, and we'll get to that in a second. But yes, the memes with the wingless wonder are hilarious. Um, but kind of shuffling on, it was lots of cars off in the kitty litter this race. Like a lot of cars off. And then, of course, they get themselves unstuck and, back onto the circuit, which then they, drag, you know, gravel onto the circuit. And did they like ever once properly sweep that?
No, they literally just let it stay there the whole race, and then it got to a point where, like, at the end of the race, everybody was like sliding off the track. Like, the track basically just became like a entire like ice skating rink by the time we got to the end of it, which probably had to do with like the some of it was probably the gravel that was brought back onto the circuit from people going off constantly, and some of it was probably like marble buildup because there was a lot of marble buildup like offline, and like it was just a whole mess. Like literally almost everybody ended up losing it, which I'm like, at some point they probably should have swept the track because I'm like, it was just gravel like everywhere. And they kind of just were like, no, and didn't do anything about it. So I'm like, okay, I guess the FIA once again, just like whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is wild. To not think that that's an important thing to clean up. I mean, that is literally it's what happened. Was it's like that scene from I think it's Home Alone. I think it's the first Home Alone. They're breaking into the house, and Kevin, Macaulay Culkin, throws all those marbles out into the atrium in front of the front door, and then of course the very slapstick, they're skating through the atrium into the living room. That's basically what we had on track, with cars getting caught in the gravel and the marbles and just off into the gravel, and then it becomes a vicious cycle as it gets stuck in diffusers and under trays and dumps out. um but anyhow, um then kind of next up, the Porsche Penske, the number 6 car, has a coming together with the Lexus, and cause a significant amount of bodywork damage, which the Lexus did receive a penalty for that, which good. Um, but yeah, I mean, it borked the car to the point that because I mean, we're all familiar with the side panels, that display car position on track, and then like pit stop and time and blah blah blah. Um, and then that was busted, and so they had to pit a few times to try to remedy that. And then they pit it one last time, like right at the very end of the race, to basically slap on a sticker, which I thought was very, very funny.
I mean, they needed to because the rules I think require that if you have your like that little number panel thing damaged, that like you have to fix it within the next pit stop. And if they didn't fix it, they would have won the race, but then probably end up getting DQ'd or something because uh, they would have gotten a post race penalty for that. So I mean, that was the only decision they had really.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, not mad at it. And then for what it's worth, and IMSA has similar rules about the number panel has to work, and needs to be fixed in a timely fashion should something go awry. So it's not unique to WEC, but yeah, but we had a good scrap between the number 12 Yoda and the number 5 Porsche Penske. They fought for a while, good, clean, hard racing. The number 38 Yoda broke. Was there ever an official cause of death for that? Because if there was, I must have missed it. But
It might have been some like issue with like the hybrid system or something. I don't know.
okay, yeah, that's kind of what I had assumed too. But like I said, I didn't see anything official, so I figured it was worth asking. Um, but to the point, part of this race that kills me the most is the number 93 Peugeot, which had been running up, basically up at the front all race, broke, and went from being within a shot of a podium. I think they were running P2 at the time, to initially ending up 7th on the road, if I remember correctly. Um, and then there's more to come from this saga later. We'll get there. But yes, the final race of my favorite wingless hypercar ends in just about the most disappointing fashion possible.
The wingless wonder went out with the whimper, honestly.
Yep, and the WEC Twitter account asks, if you could describe, Qatar in, one word, what would it be? I chose pain because that was how it felt. It's like defeat snatched from the jaws of success is really how this felt to me. But anyway, on to the more cheery stuff. Porsche Penske, the number 6, wins overall, and in the hypercar class, it was a Porsche front row lockout and sweep, and also got Andre Lotterer a win in WEC, which ends his own, I guess, career drought because the last time he won anything was Spa 2015, which is wild to think that it's been almost 10 years since the last time that he had won anything. But and then Manthey won Manthey Porsche won in LMGT3. They were the winners there. And then my lovely co-host, because she's the one who usually writes the notes for WEC, created a little subsection here on the notes that I love, and it is struggle bus and lost at sea teams, which I think is just fabulous. But there were quite a few. BMW, for the life of them, I don't know what it is. They cannot figure out prototypes like at all. I don't get it.
It was funny because I literally saw like just the other day they were like, I guess they were talking about like how in 2025, like next year, they like are thinking about expanding to like 3 entries, and I'm like,
Lord.
I mean, it said in like the like headline like that they are hoping to like get like what they have the currently squared away first, and I'm like, yeah, I would hope that you would get what you have going on squared away first before you start deciding to expand to 3 entries in the prototype class, and you don't even have you're struggling with just the 2 you have. I mean, at least currently, I mean, in IMSA, they're doing okay. Or, I mean, so far, I can't really say because they've only had 1 race, and Daytona just doesn't seem to be their track. They were pretty much slow the entire time like they were last year. I mean, they didn't fail spectacularly like they did last year and just have, like, their cars break and all that shit. But they didn't really do all that great either. I don't know. To be honest, I don't really know what goes on with them. It's just the pace is just not there, I guess. It's just nowhere to be found.
No, and we were talking about it the other day, but BMW factory teams in any category as of late, it feels like here recently, they just don't know what they're doing. I mean, you have a couple of kind of interludes. The E92 M3 GT2 was fairly quick in GT. That car's biggest fault was the fact that it was sharing a category with the C6R GT2s, which positively death starred GT racing for a while. But those were decent, but then the Z4 was garbage. The M6 really wasn't that good. Even when they dropped that car down to GT3, it still wasn't really all that great. Big M8, the memes were hilarious, but the car was not very good. And now in hypercar with these cars, yeah, I just be something about modern BMW factory programs is just not good.
And at least for prototypes, like the GTs seem to be fine. Like the GTs did pretty well. They just missed out on a podium, but the hypercars, the prototypes, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a lost cause. Starting to be at least.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they should be relegated to LMP2 or LMP3.
I mean, if they had LMP2s in all the other WEC races except for Le Mans, but.
But yeah, but this team, I'm feeling increasingly like they should be relegated to somewhere because I feel like that's probably about all that they would be good. But yeah, it's just oy vey, yeah, and I want to root for this team, but it's just I don't know. It feels like getting excited for BMW. It's the clown meme. It's like I might as well just go get the makeup. Getting hyped. Oh, BMW, they might be kind of quick. They might have some pace just to completely die in the race.
I was pretty hyped for this season for them because I'm like, they had, especially looking at their driver lineup, I'm like, yes, they're going to cook. And so far, no, they haven't even they haven't even showed up to the kitchen, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, in the words of one Mr. Gordon Ramsay, it's still fucking raw. But yeah, no, it's so bad. But yeah, but we talked about it before. Soda, Fraschini, they're slow. I don't know. They remind me of the chancers that you would see in F1 25 years ago. They're trying, but I don't know if it's resources, if it's competence. I don't know what the issue is, but yeah, they're just slow. They suck. Hopefully they'll get it together. Um, but I don't know. We're starting to feel a bit like an American or an Italian Glickenhaus, which honestly is not fair to Soda Fraschini, if I'm being perfectly honest, because they seem like they're less irritating than Glickenhaus. But
I mean, they at least they don't have nobody like Jim Glickenhaus. Like they got a whole like dickhead running the freaking team. So
hmm
I mean, they seem to be relatively likable. So it's like I don't know, like
yeah,
Glickenhaus, like they just kind of weren't likable.
no, not remotely.
Which is why I felt less bad that they didn't make it the whole season last year.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, we talked about it. I tap danced on that grave something fierce when they announced that they were pulling out.
Showed up to my biggest hater's funeral just to make sure he was actually dead.
Yes, exactly. But next up is the Akudis. Should have looked that
See,
up.
I don't know how you say it. I'm just gonna call them a CODIS
Yeah,
ASP Alexis team. As far as
yeah,
it goes for them, lost at sea. You know, they everybody else at the racetrack and they were on the deserted island chilling with Tom Hanks and Wilson the volleyball. Like they were just nowhere. I mean, I'm sorry for that because their car looks pretty good. Like it's a really nice looking car. Uh, 78 got a DNF. I don't really know what happened to it. Um, and then the other cars just they were just like slow, and unfortunately they were also getting bitched around by the other GT3 cars too. So they were just not having a good time overall.
nope. We talked about it earlier, but yeah, the Toyota hypercar was just slow. You know, it was kind of the same thing. Much like Oscar Piastri talking about the Red Bulls. Oh, the sandbags will come off and they'll be fast. Everybody thought that Kamui and Brendan were completely full of it when they were like, "Oh yeah, we think the car is kind of slow." Yeah, the car was just slow, which is kind of funny, but kind of a shame. Um, And it was funny watching, particularly after Hyperpole, watching endurance racing Twitter lose its mind that the Toyotas were so slow. I'm like, I thought this was what y'all wanted. I thought we were tired of Toyota domination. It's like, and now you guys are mad about it. It's just like, oh, good God. But
I mean, endurance Twitter is just racing fans like any other race of any other racing series. Like sometimes they're just never gonna be happy no matter what happens. So
yeah, but um, the next was the Cadillac. Which on the road, a fourth place isn't bad, but and much like we talked about, why that car got a weight increase and a power reduction given how it's done previously, it's a little confusing. But I mean, whatever. But somebody I can't remember who. Pardon me, I can't remember who it was. If I remember to find this or find the section before I we upload it, I'll insert an editor's note giving credit. But they were talking about if one car teams are really viable for any level of success in particularly in WEC. And I think that's an interesting thing to bring up in relation to the Cadillac. There have been flashes of brilliance, but I do wonder if Cadillac is spreading itself a little thin, trying to straddle both WEC and IMSA, especially given the fact that you have, the Corvettes as well. So it's not like it's just the Cadillacs that GM has to worry about. They've got a whole cadre of Corvettes. Um, yeah, or if maybe they just need one more car for additional data gathering, I don't know. I think it's an interesting point. I don't know what you think about that, but
I mean, in my opinion, I feel like they might be stretching themselves a bit too thin because I remember there also was speculation, or I think they were asked about like whether or not um, they would introduce or like have a customer team for like a Cadillac, and they basically said no, we don't feel like we can do that at this point in time. And I'm like, yeah, probably because like you're already kind of stretching yourselves a bit too thin with what's going on now. Like, I mean, like there's again, there are moments where they have, some brilliance. Like last year at Le Mans, they got a podium. At least I think the two got a podium with their lineup. But and then they seem to do fine in IMSA for the most part. But like other than that, I kind of feel like they might be doing a little bit too much.
yeah, I kind of had a similar thought. But yeah, and speaking of GM uh, things that didn't really do all that well, the Corvettes, like I said, made it to hyperpole, and even worse, the pole sitters for LMGT3, and then just slipped through the field. And I was like, What happened?" I it's,
They've let you down.
yes, it's like again, if you can probably tell by this, we tend to have chats and discussions about stuff off mic, but talked about. I said, I need the spirit of like the C7R or something to invade this chassis, because the C8s broadly have been kind of disappointing, by admittedly lofty Corvette racing standards. And then it's like so far, the couple of, I mean, admittedly, we're in a sample size of two, but the two races that the new Z06Rs have been in have just been abysmal. It's like, oh my God. It's like, I need these guys to figure it out quick. It's like a, it's like, have me about ready to go jump off the nearest tall object because of this stupid car. But the perhaps the least surprising so far was the United Autosports McLaren 720Ss or 720S Evos, to give it its government name. We saw it at the Daytona 24. The cars broke, and that's exactly what happened here, I do believe.
I don't know what happened. I'm just gonna assume it's like the same deal with the Rolex. It's some new car issues.
Yeah, and truth be told, the 720S chassis as a whole hasn't been the greatest thing ever. And then yeah, the Evo supposed to make it fast has not really worked. But for surprises, Alpine. I mean, there has been lots of ink spilled here in the last about 72 hours over the omni shambles that the Formula One team is in right now. And truth be told, the omni shambles that this team has been in for really the last almost calendar year at this point. But the hypercar team, not bad. Um, so much so that out of all of the debuting new teams this year, the Alpine was the best, which is kind of surprising. But you know what? I'm here for it. And our good old friend Mick Schumacher actually drove pretty well. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, nothing here about results or what have you or pace was like earth shattering, but like it's a solid foundation for this team and its is this hypercar program. I am pleasantly surprised by what I saw from Alpine. Like I said, beats the brakes off of anything that they're doing in Formula One at the moment. So, sort of with that in mind, yeah, bring it on. And next up was the Aston Martin, the new Vantage, which snagged a podium in GT3. And the Aston Martins at Daytona, they were not quick at all. They were pretty invisible all race, to be honest. But clearly they have taken the data gathered from the Rolex week and they figured something out because they have found some pace in a pretty short amount of time. Um, and once again, I will stress to point out that I do not write the WEC notes. Um, but Peugeot, up until the end, was actually doing pretty well. Um, and that was a pleasant surprise. I mean, Qatar is kind of the perfect sort of track for this car and this general aero concept to work. It's worth pointing out. But that being said, Peugeot has still found ways to squander it, even with that benefit before. So the fact that they, again, up until the dying moments of the race, were actually doing pretty well. And I'm about it. Um, and actually, before we move on, because there is some post-race update stuff regarding this car, I just want to point out it was about midway through the race. And I mean, mind you, this was in the prototype field. I mean, this was like for P817, I think is what they were fighting for. But there was some really cool camera work of the new Lamborghini hypercar and the Ferrari going at it. And I I mean, it's just an age-old rivalry thing, but it's just kinda cool to see Ferrari and Lamborghini duking it out in motorsports at effectively the top level of, endurance racing. That was just really, really cool. I'll need to see if I can when we put the tweet out, I need to see if I can find, like, a screen grab of the 2 cars on track together, because it is just cool. But, um But anyway, I'm stalling. The big post race update was the 93 Peugeot was disqualified. Um, you can't see me, but I am crying tears of horror and dismay. Um, the but yeah, the so the big thing was that it was a breach in BOP. Um, you know, uh, Jean-Eric Verne had deployed the RS, and speed was below that of the B, what is considered the set BOP threshold, which is 150 clicks. Which, for those of you not familiar, it's a little over 90 miles an hour, 93 to be exact. After running out of fuel, um, and the rules require that if you got to do that, you got to pit. However, in this instance, it would have resulted in basically a DNF, and they did it to effectively like finish the race or try to finish and cross the line, and that was that's no bueno. And certainly, as far as we understand it, the rules have been set into place to sort of try to level out the playing field between the LMHs and the LMDHs. So what was already kind of a heartbreaking story got worse, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's like I said, being a fan of this car is just misery. But
I mean, hopefully
anyway,
it's better at Imola with the wing, hopefully.
yeah, I mean, I hope so. Yes, but also, is it as cool now that it has a conventional wing? No. And like
No,
I know it's stupid, it's more effective. This is really what they should have done in the first place. I get it. I get it. I don't certainly don't need anybody to tell me that, but I don't know. It's kind of a bummer to see a kind of a wacky experiment, for want of a better term, end in failure. But anyway, we have the Le Mans entry list, which is fun. And a couple of noteworthy things is that Alex Pillow is going to be Cadillac's the third driver for the 02 for that race, which is cool. I'm about it. Excuse me. Um, Also, additionally, and this is, I guess, speculative, but Thomas Preining is thought to be one of the factory Porsche drivers for that race. Again, we don't know quite yet, because particularly for the number 4, I think that's the only car that doesn't have its driver lineup confirmed, if I remember correctly. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. But it's gonna be a big field for this, and still quite a few driver lineups rather that aren't confirmed. I think we have a final. The car list is final, and we've actually got a surprisingly big reserve list. Should I guess somebody pull out for some reason, we've got like 3 different GT3s that are waiting, an LMP2. We have a customer Porsche hypercar that's just kinda sat around waiting, and a couple of, Oreca P2s, so we'll have to, yeah, we'll have to see what, if, I guess, tragedy befalls and they, somebody can't make it, but, yeah, I'll be, interested to see, but yeah, big list, no fun, invitational entry this year. Although, if you haven't seen the news, Top Speed Models is doing a Garage 56 diecast, so you should go pre-order that like now because I did this afternoon. but um, but um, but yeah, so nothing special like that. But big Le Mans, big list, lots of hypercars, lots of GTS. Again, you don't have the big blue brick of a Camaro, but it'll still be fun. Um,
I mean, it should
but
be with as many cars as it is.
Yeah, how big is the car? Well, let's see. I'm actually looking at a list now. We have 23 hypercars, 16 P2s, 23 GTs. So that's a Jesus Christ. I mean, you're talking like 70 cars. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's nuts. And like I said, lots of manufacturer diversity. Because we'll have Ford back with the Mustangs, because we haven't seen Ford at Le Mans since the end of the GT uh, or the Ford GTE program. So yeah, I'm hyped. Um, we'll have to
Ford
see.
versus Ferrari 2.0.
Yeah, pretty much. And well, I guess technically you can argue 3.0 given that program, and Ford very conclusively won that scrap with the GTs. The GT, the old Ford GT program was so quick. It was well, Ford were like the kings of sandbagging for Le Mans week. It must be said. Um, but but yeah, I mean that car had like silly amounts of downforce, and then you sandbag so you get a little bit of extra power, and then you're just as quick in a straight line. And it's kind of wild. So we'll see. Because at least the first 2 showings of the Mustang haven't really been all that great. Um, The cars, well, were breaking in the Rolex. The rear trunk lids were flying off, and then the Mustang was just kind of invisible um, at Qatar because there were a couple of them, but I'll be darned if they had any hardly any airtime.
I mean,
And
they had like some airtime when like they were kind of focused on other cars and they just were in the background. And it's funny because they look massive. Like they literally just look like the BMW M8 like all over again, but just like Fords because like they look like they look like so like big and clunky and it's so funny.
yeah, it is. It's funny. They are. I mean, I know they mean well, as I mean, if any of you have seen, road going Mustangs, which I'm assuming should be all of you, given how many that they sell. The Mustang is not a small car to begin with, and then yeah, you make it wider and longer for aero, and yeah, it just looks like a brick. It's weird because even the Camaro at Le Mans didn't look as big as the Mustang does now.
It really did.
And on paper, the Camaro, at least road going to road going, let me clarify, is about the same size. Now, I would need to look up the dimensions of the Camaro Cup car because, of course, that was what the Garage 56 car was based on. But yeah, but that looked dainty compared to the Mustang. And yes, it really is, big M8 version. Well, it's big M8's American cousin. There we go. Speaks with a bit of a twang, but it's the same thing. Let's be honest. Uh, But yeah, no, that effectively rounds out the season opener for Qatar, which, like I said, good race, fun race, lots of new cars, either ones that haven't raced in WEC yet and this is their first go, or the fact that this was the first debut for some cars altogether. Um, you know, I I've talked about it all the time. You'll see me talk about it on Twitter, and certainly if you know me, I've talked about it. I love sports car racing, and the kind of the field size and just the diversity in manufacturers, I think, is absolutely phenomenal. And so this is, and I know a lot of people have said it so much to the point where it's probably lost some of its meaning, but this really does feel like a new golden age for endurance racing, and I am like couldn't be happier to watch this and now get to cover this on this medium. But anyway, before we get all sappy, I guess next on the docket is Saudi Arabia for F1, St. Pete for Indy, because those are both on, I think, one Saturday, one Sunday, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, this whole F1 racing on Saturday thing is really messing with me, And then after that is Sebring. No? I think that's the following week, if I remember correctly.
I think so. And
Yeah,
I know you were talking about before the whole like Cadillac possibly like stretching themselves too thin, or like how effective it is for them to just have one entry in WEC. I mean, I wonder if Lambo end up having the same issue because currently they only have one car entry in Hypercar and one in IMSA. So like, I don't know, maybe the same thing will happen to them since they are kind of doing one and one. Um, and then Ferrari, at least for the yellow Ferrari, I'm not sure why they are calling themselves or calling that a privateer effort, because they essentially have factory drivers on that lineup. So it's like it's basically just it's just a third factory car. Like just call it that, because it's like that's basically what it is. I don't know why they're calling it like a privateer entry.
I
It's
didn't
really
realize that
not.
they were. I didn't realize they were calling that a privateer team because, like you said, they have factory drivers. So my brain went, okay, they added a third Ferrari, whatever. I That's really dumb.
They're just cheesing that because it's like it just doesn't make sense. It literally makes no sense.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's like you literally have factory drivers on the lineup. It's like just call it just it's literally just a third factory entry, you dummies. Just call it that.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. That's wild. Interesting. But yeah, no, that's a good point about and actually, to be fair, we talk about Lamborghini and Cadillac stretching. Maybe that's BMW's problem, given that they're campaigning pretty large car lineups in both series. Maybe that's why that car sucks. Now you would think with as many cars as they have covering effectively the mileage that they have, you would think that that would actually be a significant benefit to developing that car.
I mean, you would think. I mean, they have so much data, but I guess not. I don't know. I can't tell if it's that or if it's just a BMW issue. It's just how they
Skill
are.
issue.
I don't like, yeah, I don't know. I really do not know. Like, I'm kind of out of answers or explanations for it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, BMW is weird. Like I said, that's another one that I love, really want to root for, but they can't seem to get their acts together and it makes it very difficult. They backed themselves into a potential place to win the GTP championship in IMSA last year, but then almost
Drop the
immediately,
ball.
yeah, blew it.
They dropped the ball so early on too. Like they
Yeah.
didn't even make it halfway before they fumbled. It's like, come on. I wouldn't have cared if they made it halfway or beyond halfway and then fucked up. I'm like, okay, at least you made it halfway. They didn't even make it halfway. Like the sun hadn't even set yet. Still high up in the sky in the afternoon, and here they are fumbling in pit lane because they were running the red and ran to the Cadillac and stuff. It's like Whatever.
Yeah, like I said, that BMW is so unserious. It is equal parts funny and
They're honestly an
infuriating.
enigma at this point. Like personally, I thought that was the issue with Porsche last year because I'm like, it felt like I could just never figure out what was going on with Porsche. But it seemed like their issue was just they just hadn't had anything figured out yet, and they seem to be doing fine now, or at least so far. But BMW just, I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, we talked about it last season in a lot of those episodes. I expected, Porsche Penske, the combination of the two to, very much Death Star the GTP field, and it just didn't. I'm like, huh, okay. And then, they're doing that right now. So we'll see what happens with BMW. But yeah, those goofballs have a lot to wrap their heads around. But and I guess, and actually speaking of new cars, new field and stuff, and I think why you initially brought it up, Lamborghini actually will be that'll be the first event for the Iron Lynx Lamborghini. The what is it? The SC63 V8, I think is what that car is called. It sounds like a part number, as opposed to an actual name. Yeah, SC63. Um, like SC63 499P GR10. It's all so bad. Like I said, it sounds like parts numbers. At least, Cadillac, it's V Series R, which, well, maybe a little bit plain, but it, well, says very accurately what it is and is actually like a name. Um, it actually reminds me a lot of the old Cadillac, where it was I think it was called the North Star V8 LMP. That was Cadillac's first absolutely atrocious prototype program. I don't know. Maybe if we need some content, I'll tell the story of that car because it was very, very bad. For as good as Corvette racing was at the period, the Cadillac was equal measures bad. But anyway, we're straying into retro territory, and that is not what this podcast is generally. So, with that, I bid you all adieu, and we will see you next week for Sebring and Saudi Arabia. With that, until next time.